Hi guys and welcome back. Today I want to show you guys a basic kit for when you're first starting out with watercolors. The basic things that you need just to start and to get moving. So this first shot, I'm just showing everything that I use to create the piece that I will work on after this, because there will be a speed paint where I create it using only these tools. The first thing that I want to mention is right on the left side, that big white square, that is actually the board that I use to paint on. And it is amazing because all it is foam core covered in packing tape, which makes it waterproof, and you can tape your picture down to it and it will keep smaller pieces from warping. And then on the right side, I have two palettes. Today I'm going to be using that ceramic flower shaped one just because I like the simplicity of it and that I could reel it back in and control that I was only using the 4 paints that I picked out. But if I were to buy one specifically to hold those, I would use a palette that's more like the one below it, which has a lid and it closes and it'll keep dust from settling on your paints. So a quick little intro of everything that's here. I have a cup for the water, and then I have paints. My favorite is M. Graham, but you can try out a lot of brands and figure out what you like. And then I have paper next to that, and then below that I have paper towels. That is very important for watercolors. You use it a ton. And then on top of those, I have my Micron pens and then the brushes next to it. And I'll talk more about all these tools while we're doing the speed paint. And I will have a link down in the description to everything that I'm showing here so that you guys can see what it takes to set it up and get an idea of what exactly I am using. But diving into the speed paint, I am using the paper that is B watercolor paper, and it is 100% cotton. And that's one thing that I like to look for when I'm picking out watercolor. Watercolor paper, that is. This is the basic or the most basic type of watercolor that I prefer to use. And because it is 100% cotton, I find that it performs a lot better than some of the other cheaper watercolor papers. I do actually really recommend that if you're really interested in watercolor, you get a much nicer quality of paper, an artist quality paper, and I'll have a link to the paper that I usually use down below too. The problem with cheaper watercolor papers is simply that you can't do as many layers of watercolor, and that is a huge part of getting very luscious and luminous paints and colors onto your picture, is being able to do lots of layering. So I find that that definitely holds me back because the paper starts to deteriorate or it warps a lot more. And I definitely felt that when I was working on this piece. It wasn't so bad that I feel like the piece suffered because of it. It's just more as I'm using it, I feel that it is something that I have to worry about a little bit more, and I have to tailor the way that I'm working to the paper rather than having the paper supporting what I wanted to do with it. But while I do say that I prefer artist quality paper, and I pretty much always reach for that, I do really enjoy this paper. And it's my favorite as far as budget paper. So I would definitely recommend B watercolor paper. And again, I'll have a link down below to everything that I use. But this is my favorite budget paper for me to have. But a little bit about the line work. I get a lot of questions as far as how do I get very waterproof line work. And my personal favorite is the trusty Micron pens. These come in lots of different sizes and they are extremely waterproof. I haven't had a single time where it's smudged, and I usually go right in with the paint. I don't really wait a long time before I work on it to let it dry, so I can attest to the fact that it dries very quickly and it dries very waterproof. There are a lot of pens out there that are waterproof or that say that they're waterproof and they're not, and I just always recommend when you get a new tool, absolutely practice it and try it out with all the other tools that you already own, because sometimes they're not always compatible. So if you're trying out a new pen, even if it says waterproof, make sure you test it. And I will have a link down in the description as well as in a card right now that'll take you to a playlist where I have all the tutorials that I've done for watercolors. I have one for flat washes, which is the first technique you learn when you're first starting out. And I also have one for glazing and how to create a glazing chart. And that is kind of the key to creating very rich, luminous colors with watercolors. A lot of times when you're starting out, I definitely struggled with this. I felt very confined by the colors. It felt like I was getting really flat color, really dull pictures with these paints. And I was frustrated that I was being held back by that. But the key to getting really vibrant colors that have this really interesting luminosity to them is simply layering. layer and layer and layer. A lot of times I will go in with the same color and layer on top, or I'll take multiple colors and layer them until I get this really gorgeous result. Her hair is a good example of this. I started with a yellow and I mixed in a little bit of red with that first flat wash. And if I had left it that way, it would look so flat and dull. That yellow would have almost no spark of life to it. But I ended up adding several layers on top of it, and then I added another final glazing layer that had just like a pale yellow to bring it all together and harmonize it, and that just gave it so much depth to it. It's something that when you see a watercolor piece in person that has a lot of glazing, you can really see that the light is hitting each layer of paint, and you can see the differentiating effect of it. So it does create a really beautiful look when you use a lot of layers. And that just goes back to the nicer paper that you can afford and that you do buy, the more layers that you're able to put into your pieces. And at the very beginning, I showed 4 paint tubes, and I feel like these are all you really need to get started using watercolors. So I just have the primary colors and Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is really great for deepening colors, and it's really rich. It has a beautiful coolness to it while still being very full of depth. I love this paint. It's great to mix in. But I also have the red, yellow, and the blue. But the paints that I chose are not pure red or pure yellow or pure blue. They're ones that personally I am drawn to, that I love. So the red that I'm using is a quinacridone red, and it's very cool toned and super saturated. It's really bright and kind of rosy. And I love this paint. It is one of my all-time favorites. Now, I could find a more truer red, but I prefer using one that draws me in the most. So I just suggest start out with the primary, but get colors that draw you in, that you're excited about using. You don't have to get strictly the most purest of reds that you can find. You can find one that appeals to you. I chose a yellow. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's very golden. It has just a hint of orange to it, and it's really a gorgeous shade. And I love that it on its own, I'm in love with it. I love this paint. So when it comes down to it, just get primary colors so you can mix all of them, but get paints that you love, that you want to use, that inspires you when you look at it. And when it comes to brushes, I find that there are 3 that I reach for the absolute most. I have one small one that's like a size 2, I believe, round. It's great for getting in the little details and for small shapes. And then I have a filbert size 6 or 8, I believe. It's great for medium-sized shapes. And then I have a big flat brush for larger areas where I'm doing glazing or a full flat wash. And that's really the limit of what I need. Anything beyond that is just for my own wanting, for me just wanting more brushes. But I could easily get away with just those 3 basic sizes and types of brushes. And just a little bit of information on what I do when I'm finishing up a piece. After I finish painting it and it's all dry, I'll go back in with the pen to fill in any of the areas that I might have missed while I was painting, just little mistakes while I was filling it in, so that I can get a much more polished look. It's surprising how much of a difference that does make. But finally, I forgot to show it at the very beginning, but I like to add in white highlights with white gouache. And the reason that I didn't mention any white paint at the very beginning is because you do not need white paint when you're using watercolors. The beauty of watercolors is that they're very transparent and you can layer them and they create this really beautiful look. But a lot, if not most, of white watercolor paints are very chalky. They ruin the transparency a lot. So you don't actually need them, because when you're mixing them, you just mix more water and it becomes lighter. You get more of the white of the paper showing through. So the white of the paper is your white. And it's actually really freeing to not have to worry about adding in the white with an extra paint. It's just control of the water. And there's a lot of really cool things that you can do controlling just the water itself. But there are a lot of times where I want to add back in those crisp white highlights that I might have covered up, or I just want to add to the piece. And that's when white gouache comes in. It's great because it is water soluble. So it's very similar to watercolor, and it works very well with the mindset already and with all the tools that I have. So I have a little blob of white gouache on my watercolor palette actually that I can just reactivate really quickly and add those highlights in. And for this one, I just add a little bit of a highlight on her lip and just a little bit in her hair. And that is everything for today's little intro to watercolor tools. I will again have a link down in the description to all of my tutorials, and I will also have the original from today available at my art shop, so I'll have a link in the description as well as in the end card. And if you're unaware, I do have a 20% off sale on everything over at my art shop, and that includes originals. So that is lasting until Saturday, so that is April 29th, 2017. So go ahead and go check that out if you want any prints or anything like that. I've got them over there. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I do post every Wednesdays and Saturdays, so I'll see you guys at my next one. Thanks for watching.